starting to work on April, May, and June. So if you have any recommendations, suggestions, please let myself or anyone on the entertainment committee know about that. So today we are very pleased and honored to have a world-renowned speaker, educator here to talk about something that's really hits all of us. I mean, I'm sure everyone in this room knows somebody, whether it's a close family member or a friend, that has either has succumbed or is dealing with these diseases. I know I have. When David came to me a couple months ago, and I had the chance to sit down with him and get to know him. We talked quite a bit about some of my family history as well as just what he's bringing to the table. I found him very engaging. Just a beautiful voice and accent to listen to, which just adds a little quality to it. But Dr. David Ajabi comes from Nigeria. He was educated there and got his start in the medical field, and really taking off with his company Body and Soul, which won many awards from the Nigerian and African governments for the work that he's done and his group has done with Alzheimer's specifically, and specifically with their studies and effects and how it's disparingly affecting the Black community. He's come to the United States and to Baltimore specific, and just with a mission to educate and to bring new worlds, to let us know on that while it might not be curable at this time, there are ways to put it off or to manage it, etc. So he's going to speak to those, and specifically things that are obviously very appropriate to this group of how it affects women specifically. So with that said, let's welcome Dr. David. I appreciate everything, sir. Welcome to the club.
I appreciate that. Speaking about voice, I mean, check out his voice, right? I love his voice. I wish I had his voice. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Tad, for having me here. I know it's a bit of a risk because I basically came in from off the street. I love this area, by the way. I love this location. I think it has a lot of history, a lot of good food, a lot of good people. I still can't believe, really. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I still can't believe the Peabody Library. You can just walk in and use the library. That's such a beautiful library. I could not believe that you could actually do that. So it's an amazing place. And like I said, one of the times I live down the street, or is it up the street towards the University of Baltimore? That's that up the street, down the street. Downtown is down the street, so I'm up the street, right? And semantic. So once in a while I would take walks, and one day I was walking by and I saw some really elegantly dressed ladies coming out of this building. I was like, whoa, hello. So you're like, what's going on here? So being one who never minds his own business, I decided to walk up and ask, hey, what's going on here? And they told me what's going on, and the rest is history. I'm right in front of you. How about that, right? So I'm just going to go into the slides right now. Again, I appreciate this. If there's anything you need me to say again, because I have an accent, obviously, feel free to just tell me, and I'll get back to it. You will not hurt my feelings, I promise. And I like starting off with shock and awe. This is what we're trying to avoid. This is what happens. How many of you have lost someone? I know I've spoken to a few of you. Has anyone lost someone from dementia? Okay. I'm really sorry for your loss. It's a terrible illness. Worse than cancer. I started my career treating in radiation oncology, so I started treating cancer. So I come from that background, and I'll tell you my story in a minute. But this is what you're trying to avoid. By the time a person has dementia, the more advanced state, they've lost over a third. That's over 30% of their brain mass, brain tissue. So it's not just a psychiatric, or it's just acting funny. The actual structure has been lost. That's 30% is a lot of brain tissue. When you consider what the brain power what the brain can do, that's a lot. And I'm going to go into that a little bit in more detail. That's another picture here, just for clearer comparison. It's a loss of brain tissue, not just. And I'm going to talk about some of the ideas we're looking at now, but unfortunately, it is still a widely held view that is just caused by plaques or certain proteins. Yes, that's part of the picture, but it's a lot more than that, and I hope I'll be able to explain that. So basically, three things I really want us to take away today. You want to see how your brain, you really want to understand what is important. Everybody say important. Can everybody say important?
Important.
Okay, let's try again. Important.
Important.
There you go.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I know some pronunciation differences. But you've got to know what are the most basic things where your brain is concerned that you need to take care of, so to speak. Yes, your actions play a role. Yes, genetics play a role, but more so, about 95%. What you do and don't do can, to a very large extent, affect the health of your brain. One of the most shocking things about that I've seen is that most people simply do not know. We just leave it to chance, and we think it's if it happens to me. They look at dementia like many people do. They look at dementia like it's a sniper, right? After 60, yes, takes one person out, the other person's left behind, and it's anything but. For most of my patients, when I get down and sit and talk with them, you see the progression. You see where things went wrong, and you see how things were built, how things gradually began to progress, and eventually that led to what they're dealing with at that point, whether that's memory loss or dementia. There is a progression, and it's a very clear progression in many cases. But I really feel that we need to emphasize focus on women. Does everybody know about the Alzheimer's Association? Yes, please make sure you have their contact information ready, because they are a great resource. And I'm very grateful to them, because I really spoke, I'll tell you my story in a minute, but I reached out to them, and through them I was able to do a lot of the work that's I'll be talking about later on. And so there are two reasons why I'm here, other than the fact that I live down the street. One is this: I've always had an interest in the brain. What does it take to build a strong, healthy brain? And in a country like Nigeria and other third world countries, we have a lot of brain disorders, especially among the children, primarily because access to hospitals and good medical care is a big problem. So many kids tend to be born outside of the hospital, and therefore many kids tend to have brain damage, because a lot of things can go wrong, as you can imagine. And many of these kids came from very poor homes, poor families, and so they didn't have any help. And so basically, I had my own practice, but we started a foundation called the Brain and Body Foundation, and we decided to look into seeing what we can do to help these kids, whether it's 10% improvement, 20% improvement. Many of these kids came with severe brain damage. They couldn't move their limbs, they couldn't hold their neck up, they couldn't speak and all that. And we just decided to really look into what to do, what are the basic things. And I think they call it first principles. What are the things that we can do without having access to the technology, the expertise, the hospitals? What can we do to help them at that point? And that became a struggle for me, and the more I searched, and a lot of it had to do with going back and forth from the US to find the solutions and then take them back. And so we discovered a lot of things, and like Tad said, we got some awards from the government. And in the process, we built a huge number of volunteers and helpers who are just as passionate almost as I am to help these kids. But in the process, because of our success with children, we started having parents or older people coming to us with brain disorders. Oh yeah, before then, we started with sickle cell disease is a black problem. We started treating sickle cell disease as well. We got some discoveries. Most sickle cell disease cases, 25% have strokes. 25% of all kids with sickle cell disease have strokes. That's what brought that to our attention, and they started coming in the 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds in wheelchairs for strokes, and so that's brought us into the field of sickle cell disease. But then what brought us to dementia was obviously, like I said, people started coming to us. Maybe their parents would have Parkinson's disease or strokes or and eventually dementia. Basically, we just applied the same principles that we had discovered working with young children. We basically applied that to adults, and that's how I got to be what I'm doing right now. So when I finally moved here 4 years ago, I moved to Baltimore 3 years ago. I'd stay down the street, and the first thing I had in mind was, okay, how can I contribute? How can we share what we've learned from those decades of living in the trenches in a third world country? How can I share that here? And so I joined the Alzheimer's Association, and I spoke throughout the city and beyond. I was driving as far as Hagerstown, because the second thing about me is that if I have information that I feel is important to people, it's I have a moral responsibility, an obligation. In fact, I consider it a cardinal sin if I don't share it, and it gets me in trouble a lot too. But nevertheless, it's an itch that needs to be scratched where I'm concerned, and I hate to be more graphic, but that's what I do. And so I joined the Alzheimer's Association because, first of all, it was because black people tend to have more dementia. And so I was like, we need to teach black people about this too. And so, like I said, I spoke around the city, and they engaged me all over the place, and there was a lot of ignorance there. But then, that brings us to today, and why I'm here speaking to you. We now began to realize that women, that's when I began to find out that women, which is the largest demographic really, that's me with the Alzheimer's Association people. I got on TV, Baltimore TV, WBAL, because of the work I was doing with the association. The three demographic groups that have the greatest risk of dementia are women, blacks, and military veterans. Right? And by extension, I would say firefighters, paramilitary, police, and so on. And you can imagine why, right? Stress plays a huge role. These are the words I got. Like I said, like Tad said, I'm not going to. By the way, I was Baltimore Game Changers, Baltimore Magazine. I was selected to be on the Game Changers edition, which came out last year too, because of the work I was doing. So that's why we're talking about women, because in my opinion, you are the group that needs this the most. I'm going to show you some statistics. But before we proceed, I just want to remind you, or I just want to counsel you, admonish you. Just because your doctor hasn't told you about this doesn't mean it isn't so. Okay, and I've gotten in trouble in the past because they say, well, it's not scientific. I'll speak to an audience here and they will say it's not scientifically based, and they would complain to the director of communications about, why did you bring this doctor here? And just because it's not something they're familiar with. And again, if you're not familiar with it, if your doctor hasn't told you, there's a lot of things your doctor doesn't know. I promise you, there's a lot. A lot of things I'm going to share with you today, a lot of it I learned getting outside of medicine and having to bring that into medicine. So again, just wanted to say that. I shall not go out of my way to offend you, I promise. But there might be things that may rub you the wrong way. All right. A few statistics. Did you know that Australia, the UK is the #1 cause of death? Dementia is.
Wow.
Same reaction for me. I mean, when we were in medical school, we thought dementia was the disease of the very, very old, decrepit white person. It's anything but that these days. I tell you. What else stands out? Women are twice as likely. Breast cancer. Can you imagine breast cancer? Can you imagine that? Insane. Okay. And then here's the thing that really matters too. So it's not just they're twice as likely to have dementia. The caregivers are mostly women, as you know, of course. My sister is the one taking care of my parents back home. We guys just like, yeah, how much you need? Just give her the money and she takes care of it. It's natural, right? So women take care of their parents. Baltimore City is #1. Did you know that?
In the country?
Yes.
Stress.
Baltimore City is #1 in the country. Maryland is #1 among the states. So if we're
Cases of dementia.
yes.
Why is that?
I have a couple of thoughts. I have a couple of thoughts, but maybe part of it is because we've got such great medical centers here, so the diagnosis rate is high. Another thing is blacks. This is I mean, I was going to tell you this, but this is 65%. I mean, you know this already, but if you relate the two, if you're 65% black, then that's a higher rate, and there's a twice as high a rate of dementia among blacks than whites. Then maybe you can see the connection. All right, so my big deal is, why aren't we talking about it? Why isn't this thing being screamed from the rooftops? Why aren't doctors talking about it? Because if we're not talking about it, then we're not talking about what it takes to prevent it or to protect ourselves from this, or yourselves from these sniper attacks, so to speak. So I feel that we need to talk about some basic things, because really that's what it comes down to. If you don't understand the basics, or rather, if you understand the basics, you're more likely to know what to do. But more important, you're more likely to know what not to do or what to avoid. Make sense? On a day-to-day basis. And really that's what happens with dementia as a day-to-day thing. It's just so insidious that we don't think about it. All right, I guarantee you, most of you are doing things that are leading you to that path. So you can mitigate, you can reduce that, or you can protect yourselves, knowing what you're doing. For instance, if someone smokes cigarettes a lot, right, and he can't stop or she can't stop, we know that one of the things cigarette smoking does is that it takes a lot of, it deprives your body of vitamin C, which helps to protect the lungs and protect the blood vessels. So what should you do if you smoke a lot?
Eat a lot of oranges.
Eat a lot of oranges. Now, it may be hard to come up with the amount of vitamin C you need, but just by taking oranges. But yeah, I mean that's some of the cheapest things you can do. Taking powdered vitamin C, not just the tablets, because what happens is the body takes a little bit. If you take a whole tablet of vitamin C, the body takes a little bit at that, because that's all it needs at that point in time, and then you pee the rest. So the ideal thing is to put the powder in a bottle and just sip it throughout. I mean, maybe hard to do for some, but hey, now that you know that, I mean, that helps, right? So that's the process. That's the principle I want to share with you. So think of that image of the cigarette smoking and vitamin C. Yes, ma'am.
Would you take the vitamin C even if you weren't a cigarette smoker?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We all are deficient in vitamin C.
Does that affect dementia, vitamin C?
Yes. Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about the basic things. When it comes down to the brain, it's all about what are known as the synapses. So this is the brain. The synapse is where two brain cells come together. Okay, it doesn't matter what is going on. For you to hear what I'm saying and understand what I'm saying, for you to see, for you to digest your food, it doesn't matter what happens. There has to be the transfer. So right here, so that's the synapse right there. That's what I'm trying to illustrate over here. So there has to be the transfer of signals from one cell to the next cell. And that goes on and on and on. Some cells can have as much as 10,000, even 40,000 connections, right, to different brain cells. Make sense? So this is an eye. See, light comes in through the eye. It goes through a series of synapses in the brain, and if it's something scary, he or she runs off. But it all comes down to the synapses, okay? So theoretically, the more synapses you have, or the more connections, if you think about it in real life, the healthiest, there was a Harvard study done recently, over 80-year study, and they looked out for what was responsible for success and health among the people, and it came down to one thing: relationships, good quality relationships. Now, so as it is without, so it is within, and that's where you ladies excel. We guys tend to be more lone rangers, but that's one thing that really helps, okay? And I don't have to preach that. But the greater your connections are on the outside, the better your health will be. Same thing on the inside. The better your connections on the inside, the healthier your brain will be. And that's how I saw that in kids, because I started treating kids with autism and other learning disabilities. The connections were a problem. You might find a kid who is super focused on, had poor social skills, but he was great at math. He was great at he knew how to use a computer. He was really good at technology and all that. And that's, a lot of that again has to do with the way the networks were created. So in his case, it could be that the synapses or the connections were greatest when it came to math, but they were poor when it came to social relationships. Okay? Same thing with Parkinson's disease. The problem maybe when you have the shakes, or if you're not able to move faster and fluidly enough, it comes down to the damage to the synapses. Same thing with dementia. We're going to get into that in a minute, because that is where the problem lies. And I have this number before you. This is not when the world is coming to an end. I know it looks like a date, but I put this as an interesting number. Let's start with the end. Did you know that over 80% of the energy that goes to the brain, or that the brain requires, goes towards the maintenance of these synapses? 60 to 80% goes towards just maintaining these synapses. So, and think about this. Your brain weighs over, it's about 2% of your body's overall mass and weight. Your brain requires over 20% at rest. So it can go as much as 25% of the body's energy supply. So your brain requires a lot of energy. And that's what happens, because in dementia and other brain disorders, that energy, we are now beginning to find out that that energy supply is lacking. And if your energy supply is lacking, it means that your brain is not able to do the things it needs to do, including detoxification and cleansing and cleaning out of what we know as plaques. Okay? But there's a lot more than that. So the 20 to 40% of what is going on with the synapses is that they are being modified or changed, adjusted. So as you're listening to me today, you're connecting, your brain is making connections. By the time you walk out from here in about 30 minutes, your brain will not have been the same brain that it was when you came in here. It's not like any other organ in your body. It is constantly changing. And every day, about 1 to 2% is completely overhauled of these synapses. Well, over 100 trillion synapses. I don't know who has the time to count all that, right? But over 100 trillion, about 1 to 2% of that is overhauled. What's the word again? I need to use some of my medication somehow.
Get your vitamin C.
Yeah, vitamin C, exactly. So anyway, so you get the picture. So I'm taking time to explain all that, because so you can understand now how dementia tends to happen. And I love this definition by the Alzheimer's Association. Everything else is focused on the plaques, but the Alzheimer's Association came up with this definition. The key is cell damage. Somehow along the way, the cells are either being damaged or they're not being given enough of what they need to function. And that compounds over time. It usually starts in the midlife, 30s and 40s. Some are arguing that actually starts in the 20s and 30s. But it takes a couple of decades before the first signs begin to show up. So it's a long-term thing. That's why it's so insidious. That's why we need to know what's going on. So it's damage that happens over time. Why do women have it worse? Finally, we're getting to why, right? Interestingly enough, the first ever dementia patient was a woman. And that makes sense, right? 51, I'm 52. She's 51. So
That person's 51.
this person was 51, yes. This is when the first ever dementia patient. That was 1906 or something. Okay, so these are the 12 reasons that I found out. You probably won't get this in the textbook, but because I treat dementia patients and I studied this so long and so much, we've come up with this list. So again, like I said before, maybe, the fact that your doctor hasn't told you this before doesn't mean that it's not valid. I can give you a good reason for each of them and take some time. Obviously, this is not the time to do that. We do have a course called Keeping Your Marbles. And I apply that for military veterans, for women, for blacks. So it's obviously the details will differ, but the principles remain. Where I go into these, I do a workshop, I go into these in detail. But let me ask you this: what stands out? Can you just shout out to me? Which one of these stand out to you? Anybody?
Sleep.
Sleep. Okay. Good. Very important. Yes. Anyone else?
Women age live longer.
Correct. Yes.
Digestive issues.
Digestive issues.
And hormones.
Hormones. Yes. Activity. Does that sound strange to you? No.
That's the disease to me. Muscle mass sounds weird.
Yeah,
Muscle
what
what?
does muscle
Mass.
mass
Muscle
mean?
mass.
Sounds weird.
What does that mean, muscle mass?
Well, if you compare an average man to an average woman, which person who has more muscle mass?
That's muscle mass.
So we're beginning to find out. I have a book here. We're beginning to find out that the muscles play a huge role in brain health.
So if you work out, that's better?
If
You build up your muscle mass?
Yes, if you stress your muscles on a regular basis, that helps. It's not just exercise. It's more, especially for older people, but over 50. I guess that's all of us here. It's so much more important. The mere action of stressing, not just walking. Taking walks is great for aerobics. I mean, walking helps a lot. But we want to go beyond that to actually stressing the muscles. The act of stressing, maybe lifting weights, and again, the act of stressing your muscles generates chemicals in your muscles that get into the bloodstream and get to the brain that are extremely protective. Okay, so I have this book, yeah, and I'm glad somebody pointed that out. So this is a book by Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. She is a medical doctor who started her career in the geriatric field, but also in the nutritional field, and she started looking into the brains of older people, but also the brains of people who are overweight and who maybe had this yo-yo diet thing. They would lose weight, they would regain it, they would lose weight, and then she looked at their brains and she found out that their brains were indistinguishable from the brains of Alzheimer's disease patients. And she came up with the point that it is not the fat, the excess fat, that is the problem. It is the lack of muscle that is the problem. So one of the things I'm going to implore all y'all is to begin to take that muscle aspect more seriously. Yes, ma'am.
How did she figure out that it was muscle versus something else?
Great question. I wish I could tell you that right away. I read the book. So she would treat the people who had, let me see. She noticed they also had a lot of emotional and mental stress problems, and that's when she started looking into other parameters of these people who were overweight and they had brain fog, and they were like, she now looked at all the different blood markers, and like I said, she looked at their brains as well, and she saw that they were missing. And then when she now started looking into the data showed that more muscle mass equates to better brain function. And she could see that she would do the DEXA scan and she would see that the muscle mass was significantly reduced. So I guess she connected the dots, let's put it that way. So she's really going out and talking a lot about this now. And so even I started doing this. So what I do now is on a routine basis, I don't wait to go to the gym. I have these little bars or these bands, and as a ritual before I jump into the shower, I do like, and then do, and just keep it. I'm seeing the results too. I like what I see. But it's more than that. Obviously, I want to practice what I preach, so it's very important. Probably more on the legs. You should do it more on your legs than on the hands, but it's really good. And thank you for pointing out those things. So that list of 12 things grew out of a talk I gave called Dementia's Dirty Dozen, and it's kind of like, so I use this as a checklist, and I looked at, and they all cute thing. I know they start with the letter I, and try to make it interesting to find out, and I can divide them into three main groups, but that's not for today. But so I basically kind of looked through each of these and said, okay, where are women falling short? And that's how I came up with the 12 things on that side. If there's anything out here stand out before I move on to the next one?
How are you using the word insult?
Insults, like toxins.
Okay.
Yeah, so it should be insults, sorry, that's it.
Insulin resistance, so that's,
Insulin resistance means that, so insulin is needed for your brain to use sugar and glucose. If the insulin is not working, if the brain, so it's like diabetes. You might have all the glucose in the body, but you need insulin. Your insulin is like the key to the lock that allows glucose to come out from the blood into the cells where it's needed. If the lock is not working, or if the key is not working, which is the insulin, it will not allow the glucose to get into the cell. So that's what they call insulin resistance.
so if you don't have diabetes, how would you know you have insulin resistance?
There's a test for it. So it's different from a glucose test. And of course, every doctor focuses on the glucose test, the glucose levels. Insulin is much more important because some people might have normal glucose levels and they might have a high levels of insulin and insulin resistance. And that is so insidious. So I always encourage people to ask for an insulin resistance test as well as a glucose tolerance test. That is the foreshadowing of diabetes and a foreshadowing of a lot of other things, including dementia. Got it? Okay, so we've got to move on because our time is almost up. Two main things I want to point out. So we talked a little bit about muscle mass, great. Thank you for pointing that out. And of course, we're going to talk a little bit about hormones. Because in my opinion, sorry.
Thank you.
Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you talk to say this earlier?
Exercise my neck.
Okay, now I feel really bad. So let's talk about hormones. In my opinion, that's probably the most important thing where women are concerned. Age. The most important thing that what we found out is that the most important hormone for the brain is a hormone called estrogen. Estrogen is probably the most important. Maybe insulin, maybe another one. And estrogen protects the synapse here. It helps to nourish the synapse. It does a lot of other things, but I'm making it as simple as possible. So what happens during menopause?
You lose estrogen.
You use less estrogen. You also lose progesterone, those two. You lose other things as well, but those two are the most important. So connecting the dots, you can see, just right off the bat, Now, some women have it a lot. That drop is a lot more precipitous. And so, you might have all kinds of issues like brain fog, forgetfulness, night sweats, hot flashes, and so on. Those are not just physical problems. They are signs that something is going on in your brain. And they've now started studying the brains of people going through menopause, or ladies going through menopause. And they've seen significant drops in energy during that time. And a lot of that is because of the drop in estrogen. So I guess there's a few pictures here. I'll just leave that there. One of the greatest, shall we say, injustices that has been done to women I don't say this lightly. One of the greatest, and I'm not the only one who's saying this. A lot of other people are saying this too. Has been this fear that has been inculcated in the minds of medical doctors. This fear of using hormones, especially when it comes to treating menopause or managing menopause. Most doctors would say, it's all in your head. You get through this. Most gynecologists are not trained to effectively manage menopause. Okay, and that some of it has come out of a study that was done. I was telling. Remind me of your name.
Laura.
Sorry.
My name
Yes.
is Laura.
Laura. So I was telling Laura, thank you, that there was a study that was done about a few decades ago where the results of that study was that using hormones as a treatment for these problems or emotional problems or whatever problems could increase your risk for cancers, especially breast cancer. And so there was a lot of fear being peddled that you don't just use hormonal therapy like that. And so doctors shied away from it for decades. Now they're doing a whole 180. And then we're now beginning to find out that if you manage your hormones, or if your doctor manages your hormones effectively, it can make life so much better. And of course, reduce your risk for dementia as well. So it does have to do with measuring your hormones and checking some levels and all that, and having the right doctor who knows what they're doing to address it. Yes, it does
Who's
have
the
to.
right doctor? What kind of doctor?
You got it. So there are things called the functional medicine doctors, integrative health doctors who can measure these things. I mean, if you look online for those. Now, when I treated in Nigeria or the third world countries, and I do, so once in a while, I do have patients in this country too. They need to sign a waiver because they know, because I have to let them know I am not practicing, I'm not licensed to practice in the US, so obviously I don't want to get litigated, I don't want to get a lawsuit. You know, this is the US, everybody sues everybody, so they sign waivers and all that. So what we do, because we can't measure all these things in most places, so what I had to find out was how to help your brain and your body make these hormones in the right balance, so estrogen, progesterone. So there are basic building blocks that you can find as supplements that your body can use to balance out or even out these discrepancies. And they can go a long way towards making you feel better, but not only that, but also helping your brain, helping supply the right balance of hormones for your brain. Okay? So most, like I said, if a doctor here is treating it, they would have to do all the tests, and they would have to have you come several times a week, or a month, and they'll have to make sure that they're giving you the right amounts, because you don't want to go wrong with that. I mean, you can go the other way and cause problems. So you got to get it right. I just like, because I can't do that, obviously, I can't do all those tests, so obviously the safest thing to do, and like I said, we found that out from treating kids, safest thing to do is just to give a safe supplement or nutrient and leave it to your body to do the rest. And your body's pretty darn smart. It will figure it out, and it will get rid of what it doesn't need and use what it does need. Kind of like with vitamin C. Okay, there's where it's, oh no. Come on, get back here. Okay. So your body will figure out how to do it. Okay, got it. Okay, we talked about muscle mass. So I did a presentation in Tulsa a few months ago, and Janelle and her daughter Jill, Janelle pointed out the muscle mass thing. She's like, why muscle mass? And then I explained to her the way I explained to you guys today. And after the talk, she walks up to me and she comes to me and she does this, and she's like, feel that. She's in her 80s, by the way. She looks great.
That's great.
And I felt it. I was like, I don't know what else we talked about after that. But all I know is like, all I ever said was, yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. Because I was like, man, I am not gonna mess with you. Yes.
Is there any way to get these estrogen
Progesterone.
naturally, besides having a supplement? Just, are there foods that are something that can provide some of these nutrients?
There might be. The problem with diet and foods is that they won't come in the right concentrations. Yeah, I mean, you would have to eat a lot. I know there are certain things called phytoplants, estrogens. But I gotta tell you, I couldn't tell you to save my life which ones would do that for you right off the bat. I know wild yam, certain kinds of wild yam, but you would have to take a lot of that. These things, the supplements extract them and they put them in the right amount for you. So I know certain cultures, like some Japanese cultures, they don't even know how, they don't even have a term for hot flashes. They don't have a term because they don't experience it. So why would they have an expression for it? So and I think they have, whether it's sweet potatoes or wild, but it's something unique to their environment, and they eat it every single day. I think fish too would really help a lot too, the right kinds. But again, the problem with fish is you got toxins, you got parasites, and also. So I don't want it to sound self-serving, but I honestly do not know of any food or nutrient that you can eat on a regular basis that will provide your body and your brain with the right amount of those building blocks on a daily basis. I just think it's a lot safer to just use supplements. That's just my honest opinion. I mean, that's sorry.
Doctor, with regard to estrogen, if I look at that chart, all of us are doomed because, unless we're taking hormone supplements for estrogen. But that doesn't account for sort of the scattered. I mean, we all know people who have no estrogen in their bodies who are still very cognitively alive. Is it the combination of these things?
Yes.
And weren't there a lot of studies about estrogen causing other things like breast cancer
Yes.
and
So a lot of the things that went wrong causing breast cancer is that they many times, one of the problems was that they just gave artificial synthetic estrogen without balance, and so synthetic stuff has a problem because the body does not use it as well as natural stuff, but also because they just gave the estrogen alone without balancing it out with other things like progesterone. So now we've wisened up a little bit and we now know how to kind of like balance the two out. And testosterone too, by the way, very, very important. They found out that even given women need testosterone as well, and that also drops during menopause, and for men too, it drops as well. So they found out ways to give the combination and of course monitor it to make sure that they're giving you the right combinations. Okay, so that's available. Now, just to answer your question, some people don't have it as bad as other people. It could be a genetic factor, it could be environmental factors. But I would say, if you all have the ability to, I would say definitely check that out. But the one thing above any other thing that I recommend is vitamin D. Okay? Vitamin D, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Vitamin D appears to be like the absolute, it's not a vitamin, it's actually a hormone. It appears to be that vital, most basic building block, and it helps and influences the other hormones as well. So if you cannot do what I'm asking you to do, then I would strongly suggest we start with vitamin D. Almost everybody is deficient in vitamin D.
How much should you take?
All right, I'm going to tell you what I do for my patients, and with the disclaimer that you cannot do. I mean, I'm not telling you to do what you would do. All right, so I say, at the very least, 10,000 international units for my patients during the winter. During the winter, listen to me. During the winter. What?
sun.
Because you're not getting, yeah, even if it's shining brightly out there, you are not, or your body's not making vitamin D. Why? Why? Even if there's a lot of sun today, I say sun is bright as hell.
Because
Sorry.
you're not out there.
Because you don't have skin exposure, where am I?
Yeah, you're not exposed.
Yeah.
You are not exposed. You're all covered up. And number two is that there's something about during the winter, the tilt of the earth makes it so that the rays, the specific rays, the ultraviolet B rays, are not getting to the earth like they should. So those two main reasons.
And how much in the summer then?
5,000.
Five?
About 5,000. About 5,000. But it all again depends on your weight, your age. Black people we're much more deficient because the melanin acts as a sunscreen and blocks out the rays. So the darker skin you are, the less vitamin D you're making. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so in blood testing, what range are you considering to be healthy, that 5,000 or 10,000 is good?
Great question. So on average, the range is 30 to 100. That's what your doctor is going to tell you. 30 to 100 nanograms per mil. Just remember that number, 30 to 100. What we're finding out and what neurologists and sleep doctors are finding out is that, especially when it comes to sleep, or those who treat sleep problems, they only begin to see improvement after 70. After 70, so above 70, that's when they are treating people with sleep problems. So vitamin D, as a matter of fact, vitamin D affects all 12 things, in my opinion, affects all the 12 reasons that I gave you. So to answer your question, I would say, if I'm recommending to my patients, nothing less than 70. Nothing less than 70. Yes, ma'am.
What is the difference between vitamin D3 and regular vitamin?
D3, so there's the most common are D3 and D2. D2 is gotten mainly from plants. D3 is gotten mainly from animals. Sheepskin, I think sheepskin. From our experience, the more bioavailable one and the easier to get. I mean, you can get a whole bunch of it on Amazon for like 6 months worth for like less than $10. So that is,
CVS.
CVS is more expensive, in my opinion. Amazon is really cheap. So in my opinion, I would say the D3 is the better one to get, and it's also the cheaper one, D3.
D3.
What doctors recommend, especially when it comes to injections, is the D2 when they give the injections. I don't think it's of any value. I think the best one is to take it on a daily basis, and 10,000. I mean, I do during COVID. I was popping vitamin D pills like they were going out of style. I definitely take more than 10,000 a day. I can tell you that.
I thought there was an issue about getting too much vitamin D.
Yes.
I've heard that.
Because your body doesn't flush it out like it does with vitamin C. Like you can have too much, right?
Correct. But I'm going to have to say that that warning has been way exaggerated because now, I mean, Mayo Clinic, I went to their website, they've taken it down now. They say you would have to be taking to achieve toxicity, you'd have to be taking 60,000 international units a day for several months before I achieve it. Now they're taking it down because I guess I don't know why, but you know, there's a lot of things happened during COVID, right? And unfortunately, I mean, just a lot of things that were unfortunate that happened. Because even my YouTube channel got a strike against it because I was talking about vitamin D in Nigeria. So there are some things they don't want you to know about.
Can you take a powder, or is it strictly a pill?
The most common ones are the gel capsules, but yes, you can take the powder as well. One of the things we give our kids with sickle cell disease too is the powder or the tablets. But no, it's not available. I don't think it's more like the gel capsules. Okay, so I was going to say something. No, it's okay. Yes, I remember now. The main concern with vitamin D is calcium, higher calcium levels. So obviously, we all know vitamin D helps with stronger bones, right? The way it does that, it helps in it absorbs calcium from the digestive system, from the food in the digestive system. So it raises calcium levels. So the fear is that if you take too much vitamin D on a regular basis, you will raise the levels of calcium, and that can lead to problems like kidney stones. Okay. So The antidote to that, which I recommend to my patients, is you take the combination of D3 and vitamin K2. That also is available on Amazon and is also dirt cheap. What K2 does, and ladies listen to this because this is very important. What K2 does is that K2 takes the calcium that is high in the blood and it drives it into the bones and the teeth. Okay? So that really effectively neutralizes the fear and shall we say the negative effect of vitamin D. I still have to insist that negative effects are really small, even if you cannot get a K2. But the best, to keep it safe, just take the D3 and K2, and I can recommend specific brands you can get off Amazon again. By the way, in Japan, the way they treat osteoporosis is by giving high doses of vitamin K2.
So I was gonna ask if it helps osteoporosis or.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'll try it.
Yes. So you all need to be, and so the two things that help osteoporosis, vitamin K2 and
How much
building
K2?
muscles.
How much K2 should you take?
So they recommend, and what I recommend, and the one that's on Amazon is about 100 micrograms. So it comes in a combination. So 10,000 international units to 100. So it's 100 to 1. I recommend. So what it comes on the one I get from Amazon, it gives you 10,000 international units and it gives you 100 micrograms. So it's the ratio is 100 to 1. 100 to 1. Got it? Okay. So can we proceed?
Yes.
Shall we? Okay. All right, so these are some quotes from Gabrielle's book. I need to get her on my show. I do have a TV show that's one of the best in Africa, so we want the best award in Africa. So I like to take in some of these studies and get some of these people and have and interview them for my TV show. So I'm thinking about using her. Studies have shown that working out increases blood flow to the brain, promoting the development of new brain cells. We all want that, don't we? By the way, your brain does make new brain cells. Your doctors may say otherwise. They are still teaching them in medical school. But once a brain cell dies, it cannot be replaced. That is wrong. The brain makes new brain cells every day, and there are things you can do to increase that rate of production.
Does running also help?
Yes. Do you run? Fantastic. So that helps too. Anything exercise can help, but with training the muscles helps. So if you can get access to someone, a good trainer who can help you, that'll be great. The quality of life. So this just underscores what I said earlier. That the quality of life correlates directly with your muscle health. If your muscles are healthy, you live better. Now you do have, I don't want it to be all doom and gloom. You do have some advantages as women, which you already are obviously taken advantage of. Up until menopause, you have estrogen, more estrogen than we do, so that helps to protect your brain. But then everything kind of goes south. You do have better immune function, so that helps as well. One of the reasons why men had were more badly affected by COVID-19 than women were was because of better immune function on women, amongst other things. You do have more your brains tend to use more energy and you have more connections. Because obviously, like I said earlier, the more connections you have, the better your brain is. But the more connections you have, the more energy your brain uses. So one of the things that I talk about too is I give a class on how to improve your brain's energy supply. That includes the fuel your brain needs, but also the way your brain has to process the fuel to produce the energy. And then there's a lot that goes into that as well. All right, so let's kind of like wrap this up. So we talked about you all are at high risk because there are greater attacks and fewer defenses. Menopause. The extent of damage depends on genetics, lifestyle, diet, and events of the past, including childhood events. There's a lot bottom line, this is the most important thing I want you to take away. There's a lot you can do to protect yourselves. Three main things that I strongly encourage. Check your hormones, especially vitamin D. I mentioned that the level you want to aim for is 70 nanograms per mil. Sleep is when your brain repairs itself, when memory is consolidated. A lot of things happen during sleep. If you are not getting good quality sleep, which would be what? 7 to 8 hours a night, incomplete and total darkness. No flashing lights, no open windows, no nothing. If you can get a sleep mask, get a sleep mask. Cover, you have to sleep with a sleep mask. It has to be total darkness, otherwise the quality of your sleep will be affected.
Blackout.
What now?
Blackout drapes.
Blackout drapes. Yeah. That's, I cannot emphasize that enough. And again, one of the problems I see is that most women do not sleep as well, especially after a certain age. And you think it's normal. It's not. So quality and quantity are very important. Vitamin D helps with that too, like I said. And of course, build muscles. I would say get to work out. I was asking if you guys have a workout place here at gym here. You all don't, but you do have a partnership with Maryland Club, right? So you can use.
Can't use it.
You can't use the gym?
No.
Oh man.
We're resourceful.
Yeah. Do weights at home.
Yeah.
We're on the steps.
Well, be careful though. You gotta make sure you do it right. So, I thought you guys had access to the gym over there. Yeah. I'm speaking there next month. I'll tell them to change the policy.
Yeah. That
Good
won't
luck.
happen.
So, like I said, we've got to focus on women. Anything you guys all can do to help us out. Maybe churches, if you have any ideas of churches or anywhere, community centers, if you have any ideas, I'd love for you to share that with me when you maybe doing dinner or somewhere. But we have to get the word out. So, there you go. So, that's my information. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do you have anything to hand out?
I'm sorry, do I have anything to hand out?
Like this?
Yeah, I mean, Chad can, what I do is that I turn them into a PDF and then I can send it to you. Or if you are interested, like I mentioned about the workshop that I do, if you are interested in knowing more information about that workshop, there's a sign-up sheet here, you can just put your names and all that. And of course, we can send, if you're interested, send me an email. And of course, we can send you the handouts too. So if you want the handouts, just send me an email.
Let's go get our
Give you the handouts, okay?
Yeah, I did K2. I've never heard of K2.
You've never heard of K2?
I've heard of K does something about plotting and blood.
Yes. That's different. That's very different. Yeah. That's K1. That's K1. K2 is the.
I cannot take estrogen because estrogen caused me to have, focal nodule or hyperplasia. It's a gigantic tumor on my liver.
No way.
Yeah, and by going off of birth control pills and no estrogen, it went away.
Nice. Okay.
So I'm very careful about estrogen.
Yes. So, and that's what we found out. If you just give the basic, so the supplements don't contain estrogen. They just contain the building blocks for your body to make.
But I'm not going to take any estrogen.
So it's not the same thing. It's not the same.
But I do the other stuff.
Right. Okay. Okay, good. But weren't you the one who wanted to know about how taking care of a loved one?
How you deal with, what is the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's?
Thank you. So Alzheimer's is a type. So dementia, about 100 different dimensions. 100. Alzheimer's is just one of the 100, but it's the most common one. Yes, that's the only difference.
And Lewy body.
Lewy body, yeah.
It's similar to all.
Yeah, it has a tinge of Parkinson's disease as well.
So how do you know that somebody isn't just having regular aging dementia as opposed to, and how do you deal with it? How do you deal with people who don't want to think they have dementia?
Oh, those are in denial?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
So there's someone who really talks called Tifa Snow online. She really does talk about all these answers and all that. And sometimes there's some deception involved. You gotta find a way to trick them into going to see the doctor or doing tests and all that, because it's so hard. I mean, it's really hard to get many people, especially.
I mean, they won't get hearing aids, they won't, you know.
Yeah.
I've had a situation a couple
Sorry,
times where
I just need to turn this off.
yeah, where somebody's woken up from